Welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. I have Martin Armenta of the Instagram page Firearms Chronicles. Martin, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's been a little while. Like I said, I listened to you first time. I think it was at SHOT Show last year, and then you asked like, "Hey, if you're at SHOT Show, show up." I was invited, but I'm invited this year.
Hey man, it's really great to have you. I always value the time that I get and the knowledge that I get from people along the way, whether it's 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, whatever it is. Like it all holds the same amount of value for me when people take time out of their day to put time into providing information or and asking questions and check for understanding, and do it with a sort of a passion and a quality of delivery that you can tell, like it's palpable. Like you can tell this is really important to this person and it's really important to them that I get, or the person that they're talking to gets the message. And man, you have influenced me in a lot of ways for several years now. I want to really talk about you and what you're doing, why you're doing it, where you came from, how this all came to be. And I'll just start before getting into the questions with you, just by saying this. Like, I love that you go deep into the sort of the detail, but you know, of what may be going on, say, in the fight for Second Amendment rights, or just in the legal battles that are happening from state to state, city to city, municipality to municipality. But more importantly, I love your take, and it's clear to me, you know, where you stand on the side of the Second Amendment, and I think people have to have their convictions, and you need to do that. But at the same time, it's not offensive. It's not like, I think it's very objective is the word I would look at. I think it's objective, and you deliver their message in a really healthy way. So I just kind of wanted to start by that. So for people that may follow a lot of pages that get a lot of information from other folks, and we can talk about some of those folks, or some of those pages, not people specifically. I think this is what you do, and your message is different, and I think we're going to learn a lot about you tonight, which will really articulate, and you can really articulate like why. So sorry, I'm going to shut up.
Cut out.
That's cool. Like, we're probably going to do that a little bit. So if you didn't hear the question or whatever, just hit me back. We're doing one of these remote guys, which I hate. I would come to Idaho if I could have done it, but this is the forum we got. So I'm gonna shut up. Let's start with you, man. Give us the Reader's Digest version about you, man. Like, who are you? Where you're from? Where'd you come from? How'd you get into this? Start and finish wherever you want.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. Been there basically my entire life. Grew up in Los Angeles. Like I said, I'm really from the areas of like Huntington Park, family in Florence.
Okay.
Also grew up and went to school in Southgate. So lived there for quite a while, but yeah, I'm 37. I grew up, in the late 80s, early 90s, and I saw a lot of these things go down, man, where, the Rodney King riots and everything, and how it also impacted me as well. And what I saw, and the first time that I ever got to know like safety, especially coming from my own father. After that, I said I lived in Utah for a little while, for about 3 years, from the age of 10 to 13. Moved back, and I was raised in Riverside, California, or should I say Moreno Valley to be more specific. I graduated from there.
Okay.
And I moved to Idaho in 2015. Been here ever since. So about 30 years of my life, I lived in California, and have been up here for about 7. So that's kind of my upbringing from there.
So let me jump in here. So first off, I heard a couple things there. Like, I'm familiar with Florence, Huntington Park. I'm very familiar with Huntington Park.
Mm-hmm.
That is, for people that don't understand maybe the geography in California, like, everybody thinks it's LA or San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not from here, they all think it's like, oh, you're either from LA or San Francisco. Some people know about San Diego, and that's a little bit different, but that's kind of the way people break it down. When you're living, like, you're talking like southeast central LA County
Correct.
in Huntington Park, right?
Hmm.
And look, I actually used to work there and have to travel into there quite frequently. Let's just say it's a very challenged neighborhood.
It is,
Let's just
especially when you
say,
live off Santa
is
Fe.
that fair?
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I grew up in Southgate, went there, but the majority of my family lived in Huntington Park, or they
Mm.
still live there as well. So I still have a lot of family down there. And so I want to say I grew up there for the most part. That's where I'm familiar. I grew up in the Santa Fe area. Um,
Mm.
Also, I saw a lot of things happen there. I heard of a
Yeah.
lot of
What's it
things.
like?
And so,
What's it like there, man? What was it like growing up there as a kid? Like, talk about like family life and all, and like going to school and what it was
yeah,
like.
families, like I said, everything. I hate to quote Vin Diesel there because, that's just how it is. But grew up in it's just like a 99% Hispanic area, man. I mean, we have friends there. Grew up, we always threw, my family always just had party events and everything else. Yeah, it's just heavily Hispanic. Great
Okay.
friends, never saw any issues, never had a desire to be in gangs, nothing of that sort. You saw all that. Especially at night, man. I mean, you would hear helicopters constantly flying everywhere. I would hear gunshots and all kinds of other things, but I was never part of that. I grew up I had a great childhood. I had a great childhood growing up there. I made a lot of friends. We would all just start playing sports like, hey, we saw the Sandlot. Let's make our own little team, right? And we had a park
Mm.
right in the center where all the neighborhoods were at, just a complete circle. And we did that for years. We played baseball, we played soccer, we played a lot of cool stuff there, man. So to say a negative perspective of my life, no, it was great, man. Everything was walking distance. I didn't really feel like I was in danger when I walked from one place to the other. When I walked from my grandmother's house, that's where like the main hub. That's where we were at
Hmm.
95% of the time when growing up down
Hmm.
there. You know, Walk over to La Pacific. I don't know if you remember La Pacific. It's
Hmm.
like a strip in the strip mall. Yep, right there. They had
Yep.
Tres Hermanos. They had El Gallo Giro. They had all kinds of stuff there, man. So, um,
Some of the best food in Southern
oh,
California, right there, man.
absolutely, man. I can't complain, man. I had a great childhood growing up there.
When you were a kid, so as we're going up here, sounds like a great childhood, man.
Mhm.
So as you get older and you move on and you move sort of around a little bit, I heard you say Utah and then ultimately Idaho. Where, if anywhere, or at any time during your childhood, are you introduced to firearms or firearm safety, or like from a recreational perspective, from a violence perspective, anything like that? When does this show up for you?
So a lot of that, man, just really started with movies. Navy SEALs, Terminator
Cinema,
2,
got it.
all these other ones. That's where I got fascinated with firearms. Not in a killing sense, but more of like, wow, those are awesome. I want to own one of those. Another side of that as well was when the Rodney King riots happened. I was in kinder. I was 5 years old, and I recall um, getting picked up from school. My father came home early, and all he told me and my brother was, "I want you guys to just sit in the middle of the living room and watch TV. Do not look out the window." Right. And at that time, I was kind of clueless to what was going on, really. But what I recall is uh, my dad bringing home a firearm. It was a
Okay.
Mac 11 full auto. And
Wow.
yeah. So a friend of his from work let him borrow it because of the whole thing that was going on. So, like I said, he bounced early. And that's when I first started finding out about protection and everything. When I started realizing, he's like, wow, my dad, he really wants to take care of us. He's taken, this extreme precaution, to guarantee our safety. And that's where, I had my first glance at a real gun from there. And that's when I just started realizing that, you know, wow, these things, are not just like how it is in the movies. These things are to protect you.
So I have a little bit of a different experience growing up. Mine was more from a hunting perspective or recreational perspective. The protection piece was sort of built in later. Did this escalate, or was this just like, okay, this was kind of this one time incident? I recognize it was there, and you were now informed. Where did this take you from there?
So from there on, really was just like a big gap. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until, I started growing up and, had a lot of friends that, were not so friendly of the 2A, or for the most part, just had no idea, you know, uh, uh, why somebody should carry a gun. And I just kind of
Okay.
bandwagoned it. I was like, whatever, cool. No big deal. But then afterwards, I started kind of thinking to myself, like, well, I know I don't need one, but it'd be good to have one because I believe in protection, especially uh, growing up in high school in Moreno Valley, especially during that time in the early 2000s. I went from, I started high school in 2000 and 2004, and the school that I had gone to at that time was ranked the second worst and one of the most violent schools in the state of California.
Wow.
And so, yes, I saw a lot of things go down. There was a murder just in the parking lot of the school.
Hmm.
I knew the guy personally, just one of those things that never thought he would do, and from there on, haven't seen him since. And so I started getting more like, I'm going to do my own research for myself, as for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself, and notice that, hey, it's my right. You know, sure, I didn't need one at the time, but I understood that other people needed it. Right.
Hmm.
And the more and more that I dug in, I started going, yeah, no, this is my right. I can own one if I want to. I don't care about anyone else's opinion, right? And so then I started introducing this to some of my friends. Some understood and were just kind of like, yeah, I get that. I may not need one, they said, but others do. Others were just kind of like, you're a monster. You don't need that. You got the cops. You got
Hmm.
everything. Um, and that's how it just kind of started for me there. I had a friend, well, still is a friend. I was working as an EMT for a while, and I met a lot of people there that were super friendly, had firearms, and then it wasn't until I got invited to go out and shoot. I was like, well, I was excited. Um, and that's when my friend brought out an AR-15. And I must have been maybe like 21, 22 at the time. And that's when I got my experience of shooting an AR, shooting I shot a shotgun before years before, but this is the second time shooting it, handguns and everything. So it just like it lit up my world from there, and it's like I became obsessed and I understood why. It was a great experience. I had proper teaching. I had all kinds of stuff, marksman, and it was just like, dude, this is awesome. From there on out,
Hmm.
man, that's where everything started for me.
I think I think probably there's a lot of people that can sort of relate to that moment, like
Uh-huh.
when the light bulb goes off or you just get bit by the bug. And yeah, the realization of the importance of what these things can do, the capability that you could have, the superpower that it sort of or could provide in a particular situation, but more importantly, the magnitude of what the 2A actually kind of means. And I don't know that everybody reaches that all those conclusions at the same time or in the same way. But I do know that feeling myself. And I do remember being at a time where, I thought I felt strongly. And then things happened in my life where I recognized like that got amplified by about, 25 times
Mhm.
where I felt that much more strongly about it. And I can also recall times having really great experiences and having really good experience or really poor experiences. And maybe at the time not knowing how good they might have been,
Mhm.
from like an instruction perspective or just again, like not understanding what I may have been shooting, what somebody brought out to the range, like from a firearms perspective, like something that might be like just really uncommon that you might be able to shoot, or like very rare, or an antique, type of thing, or something that's kind of like a collector's type thing. And at the same time, on the other side, like not knowing till later, like, man, that time I went out with those guys or with that guy, like that was a mess. Like that I wouldn't want anybody else to have that kind of experience now. So I guess again, I think a lot of people come to these experiences on their own, and I think more than ever there's this we're at this place in history where people are recognizing that there's a problem, right? And it's not like, and I think they're recognizing that while I may have been a little bit disenfranchised with the whole gun ownership thing and the Second Amendment thing, I'm recognizing that there is a problem, and this is something that I may need. Like, I never thought I might say that out loud, but I might need this, because I might need to protect my family. I might need to protect myself in my property and whatnot. And so they may be reading or looking into things or starting to have that conversation, maybe in a little bit of a different way. There's a problem. Like we've got a violence issue. We've got a people running amok issue. We've got no one's coming to save you kind of issue, and you're your own first responder issue. And they're recognizing these things, and they're facing that hard reality. And they're maybe thinking, even if they were maybe anti-gun or not, let's just say very kind of ambiguous or on the fence about firearms, gun control, the whole 9 yards in the past. Now they may be thinking differently. I mean, we saw a huge uptick in this during the pandemic, during some of the events that unfolded during the 2020, 2021, where people were rushing to the firearms stores to buy handguns or buy firearms for the very first time.
Yep.
And I mean that again, there was a huge uptick. Now we have more firearms owners in the United States than we've ever had. You mentioned California. We have way more in California than we've ever had. And I think people were met with a lot of challenges. When they walked into the situation, what's the right firearm for me? What should I be buying? What is this? How much ammunition do I need? I don't even know how to shoot this thing. Like, there's all these things. So all of a sudden there's new problems. The problem was, like I've got a personal or family or a safety or security issue. Now I've just escalated my problems and multiplied those by many, many times, because I've gotten myself into a situation where I've made an investment. I've purchased something that I don't know how to use or I'm not super confident with. There's safety issues because of that. How am I storing it? Where am I putting it? God forbid I should even have to use this thing.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, there's a lot of funky laws that I had no idea existed. Like just driving down the street with this thing from the shop to home, I could get pulled over and get in a lot of trouble, particularly here in a place like California. So again, my point of this is like people are like, they're becoming more problem aware all the time. And it's not just like I'll just say this, one problem seems to turn into another problem, turns into another problem, and turns into another problem.
Correct.
So these conversations are happening. I think people are very confused. They do not understand a lot of what they should understand to be a responsible citizen who is exercising their Second Amendment rights. So you just kind of painted a picture there about how you had a really good experience and maybe had some mentorship on how to do that. I think there's a lot of people that don't. And you work in a gun shop, right?
Correct. So
can you talk about this experience? Like, what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, like you touched up on, as far as a good experience, and that plays the biggest factor there, because people in general that don't come from a background that hunting or from family tradition where firearm ownership is big in that household. I think a lot of that, like I said, I had touched up on as well, just like you were talking about earlier. Luckily the gentleman that helped me out, his name is Ralph. He definitely, he was in the Vietnam War and everything. So he had, skills, he had experience with that. So, he taught me, about marksmanship and how to shoot, handgun and everything. And because a lot of us new gun owners, or most that come in, kind of have this stigma. It's like what the news, and politicians make it seem that owning a firearm is taboo. Oh my gosh, that doesn't happen. You got to be, some type of crazy to own something like that, right? Or to be paranoid. And I think, like I said, proper training, people, will kind of bring that down, because I was in that as well. I was kind of like, man, I wonder if I just touch this trigger, if this is going to go off and might hurt somebody. You start thinking of the
Mm,
worst. It might ricochet, and oh my god, that's the worst of the worst. But I was taught properly, and I was told no. I was told about the myths. I was told about um, the dangers and then the positives of owning a firearm. As we all know. And soon after that, as well, after I got taught, I was a little bit skeptical walking into a gun shop, because I'm just like, crap, what if I walk in and I pick out a gun? I don't know the name of it. I don't know the model of it. I don't know what it does. I don't know what, uh, bullets this thing takes. So I felt like I was going to be some type of, like, a fool, and going to be
mm,
denied a transaction of a firearm or even a background, because I just didn't know anything about this thing. But luckily, I
mm,
also had a good experience in the gun shop, because they were patient, they were nice enough, and everything, and they just kind of went through everything for me, and I was grateful. I was absolutely grateful, and like I said, that also plays a huge factor, because you go to different stores and different gun shops, and you have different types of personalities.
mm,
And I think what it lacks of is just being approachable, because I took my experience from when I was first taught and everything, and we get a whole bunch of new gun owners, the first time that walk in, and it reminds me of me, because I used to be in that position. They would say the same thing. I'm nervous. I never touched one of these. Can
mm.
you just explain everything? And I'll, and I'm approachable when it comes to things like that. Am I the smartest person and know everything about each and every firearm? No, but you know what? I'll teach you the basics. So from what I was taught, and also working at a gun shop, I was being taught more and everything.
Mhm.
So, and it's great to hear from new people that say, hey, you know what, thank you, I had the stigma, I was afraid, some of these people are just mean, and they're just kind of scoff and be like, you don't know anything, here's a gun,
Mhm.
just buy it and take it, and you're on your own.
I hear this quite
Experience,
frequently in
they're
that,
very
people
nice,
go into gun
approachable.
shops to ask basic questions, and they wind up in a conversation with a guy that doesn't want to give them the time of day, or they feel they're being condescending. And so I think that fear that that you mentioned is very, very real for a lot of people.
Mhm,
And I think beyond that, there's not a really good place to go
mhm,
for these people to be educated, like
correct.
to have a dialogue, to have a conversation. Where do you go? And if you jump online, the internet would have you sign up for an NRA, shooting class.
Tons
But
of
at the
things.
same time, you could go to another page, and these guys are even going to the gun shop, and they'll tell you, oh, that's stupid. Don't ever just go to a basic NRA shooting class.
Mhm,
Right. So where does that leave the person? Leaves in the middle, like, well, what the hell do I do?
mhm.
Oh, well, let me send you over to this guy. Here's his card off the counter. And they pick this guy's card up off the counter, and it's got all kinds of acronyms from his resume
Oh
in
yeah,
the military or law enforcement. He's sitting there wearing, multicam, and he's running, like he's getting full kit, and he's got,
yeah.
an AR-15, and he's got pistols and mags hanging off of him, and he does all this stuff. It's like, for a new person, that can be really overwhelming. Like,
You
where do
cut out,
I,
buddy.
where do
Okay,
I
you're
go?
back.
Yeah, sorry, man. But where do I go? Where do I go to have these conversations? And
Cut out again.
and again, like if you go to the gun shop, you could have some really wild ones. And unfortunately, I hear people having more poor experiences than good ones at a lot of times. And I think a lot of this has to do with like the barrier of entry. Agree or disagree, the barrier of entry to work in a gun shop is not very hard to get through. Like
Right.
there's not a very high standard for how much you have to know, what type of a dude or person do you have to be, how personal do you have to be to stand behind the counter and sell somebody a gun. I mean, what's the reality of that?
Dude, you just got to have a good personality. That's it.
Right.
Be approachable.
It's a sales job.
That's
That's what it
in
is
my
at the end of the
that's
day.
that's what it boils down to. And I learned a lot, and I think we all learned a lot from 2020,
Mm,
Gunmageddon. And that was a wild year to work at a gun shop. I'll tell you what. Um, we were just so overwhelmed. We had so many people coming in and just kind of not knowing what they were getting themselves into. They just said, I just need to
mm.
protect myself, right? So for the most part, my colleagues were just kind of giving crash courses and such. And, we were trying to, tell people, hey, just take it easy. Like, don't panic buy because, I just need it. I just want to take it. It's here.
Mm.
And people were paying, at other gun shops, ridiculous prices, man. They were selling Glocks for $1,000, and,
Mm.
not to bash on Glock or anything, but that's ridiculous. I'm not going to spend
It's
$1,000.
ridiculous.
I'm not going to
Yeah,
spend
it's
that. And
ridiculous.
a lot of people also, in a sense, they learn the hard way, especially in states like California, where a whole bunch of uh, new to be gun owners came in and they picked out the firearm, they picked out the ammo, and they said, "All right, cool. I paid for it." They do the background check, thinking that they're going to take it home that day, and then they realize,
Mm.
"Oh yeah, you got to wait 10 days." And they go, "What are you
Mhm.
talking about? Wait 10 days? I need this now." Sorry, man. That's some of the laws that some of the leftists um,
Or
voted
maybe
for.
you voted for.
Voted
Yeah,
for.
you voted for that.
And they
Yeah.
realized this is fucking ridiculous. Really, they stomping out.
Yeah, right.
A few of them were offering money under the table. They were saying, "Well, what if I give you extra money? Can I take it home?" No, man. This is federal,
Right.
man. This is state. This is all kinds of other stuff, man. I was like, this is not how you do it. If you have a problem with it, vote something, vote something else in, or read what you're about to vote in and not just hear that, hey, this is an anti-gun bill. Oh, I'm just going to sign it off. No big deal. And it was a lot of learning curve for a lot of people in California. So, um, but people know
I think
now.
where this yeah, they do, but I think where this leaves us is in this area of the uninformed, right? Like there's still a lot of the I think the majority of gun buyers these days, and again, that's not the ones that have purchased them before, but even the ones that have purchased them, I think are still a
Mhm,
bit uninformed about what the particular laws are, regulations, or stipulations are in their particular state. I know that's the case here in California
mhm,
because how in the hell could
right.
you keep up with it all? I mean, it is wild. Law enforcement doesn't even know. If you ask your law enforcement, and they shouldn't. They
Mhm,
shouldn't. Nobody
right.
nobody can keep up with the amount of stuff that's out there in this state. And I don't want to go down into that rabbit hole with you, but
Right.
I guess that the question is, or the point I'm trying to get to is like people don't understand how much of this goes on a daily basis and
Mhm,
how this affects them now, could affect them in the future, and how it's affected things in the past and how all that stuff stacks up. So I want to transition like into the page,
mhm.
right? That you're doing in Firearms Chronicles and how this got started. You've been doing this since like 2018,
Yep.
right?
Correct.
So this is pre Gunmageddon, right? So this is going back a few years. I just wondered, like, what's the origin story of the page? How did this thing get rolling, and why did you start it?
Simple, man. It was just one of those things where I obviously believed in self protection. It's our right as citizens. It's in our constitution. We have that right. That's us. And so I started looking into pages, right? And I started, at that time it was just a regular profile. It was just my name, and I started following, all these, podcasts. I started seeing, gun influencers and whatnot. That I started looking at, and so one day I just thought to myself, I was like, how can you be involved in this and still make an impact and still make a difference? Like,
Mm,
how are you going to set yourself different than anyone else and still have an impact? And during that time, I think it was, 2015, something along those lines where they started censoring information, right? And I started following pages, like with Cam Edwards, The Truth About Guns, Ammo Land, and everything. And I noticed that I was like, well, what if I'm the only one reading this? I was like, how is it getting to other people? Because that's the way I felt, and that's when it clicked. Dude, be a news page. Send out the information. I mean, I started from zero. I had nobody. And so then I slowly started just posting, and I just started doing some hashtags and everything, and just informing some people, hey, I posted this up. Take a look, some of the influencers, and that's how it kind of started. It started spreading like a wildfire. And what I was noticing is that, well, there was a lot of information censoring, and I had heard that they're like, oh yeah, they're going to crack down on gun pages, all kinds of other things, all the information they're putting out. And I said, well, no. I was like, I'm going to start this page, and started posting. And sure enough, just over the years, it started gaining traction. And over the years, I knew I was making an impact because I was getting not blacklisted, but was a shadow banned. So right there and then, I knew I was doing something.
You made it.
Yeah, I knew I was doing something right. Exactly. So I kept going. And, sooner or later, a lot of people started reposting. I started getting some of the influencers going, hey, man, this is good. Keep up, and a lot of it, the main thing is just being consistent. Even though I had little followers, I just still kept posting and posting and posting. And sooner or later, it started picking up that traction. So that's where it really started. It was really just, I need to get information out there, not just for me to see, but for the world, all U.S. citizens. And not only that, I get people from Europe too, from all other, from all walks of life, and then they were saying, oh, you post good information. I wish my country saw this, of the importance. So that's when I said, I was like, no, you're going to remain consistent. And that's how it started.
You've certainly done that. I mean, I just going back with how you've influenced me. I think when I started really digging into the social media side of the space, the industry, that being firearms, particularly, let's just call it Second Amendment and general preparedness, and all the things that come along with that. Equipment manufacturers and meme pages, and I mean, it's just, there's a lot if you're jumping into this as a newbie. So I was like, I was just trying to make some sense of it all, and at the same time train and learn, and kind of understand who the characters were. And I was seeing a lot of weird stuff. To me, was weird. Like, God, why is everybody so angry? All the time, or like, this seems weird. Like, I understand style and art and whatever, but this just seems a little bit weird or wacky out there. At the end of the day, what I was finding was there were these niches that people were filling in terms of information providing, and whether that was a guy that was specifically providing information about gear, or somebody was like this particular type of training, or whatever it happened to be. Like, I started to latch on to them, and then obviously there's a circle within a circle within a circle. The information that was coming out on sort of firearms law and legislation was generally being provided by the news media. And so when we go back to kind of what you're doing, I would consider you, and I don't know if this is an offensive term or not, but I would kind of consider you like a citizen journalist. And I think that's sort of a trending term, like citizen journalism. And so there was this, what you're getting from the mainstream media, which obviously at this point is, I think many, many people understand you have to take everything with a grain of salt here, and kind of, look at both sides and kind of make your way to the middle somehow. But that's never been the case. There's no middle ground on firearms policies. There's just zero. It's either you're all the way on one side or you're all the way on the other, and there's nothing in the middle. And it's really hard to make sense of it. So that wasn't a good place for me to go. The other place I was going was I was seeing a lot of attorneys post stuff. And there's a few of them that I think do a really good job. People that are in this space. Collier Noir, I think, the Arms Scholar. these guys do a fantastic job of being able to break down the information, what it is from a legalese or a legal jargon perspective or whatever. But you can get lost in the sauce there. It can be really hard to kind of assimilate, I think. And there's also a tone and a style or delivery of a style of the delivery of information. And, there were some other guys out there who was like, hey, here's my, and I've just mentioned one of them, but there's this new ruling and here's a cool thumbnail, but, and go to YouTube to listen to my full video on this whole thing. And I'm like, man, I can't be, I just don't have the time. I don't want to spend the time. Not that I don't want to spend the time learning, but if I got to go to all these places to get it, like that's just going to make it that much more difficult for anybody else to get the information. So when I came across your page, what I got from it is this guy is putting in a very dense amount of information in really a very short amount of time. And I think that's what, if you're on social media, particularly this platform being Instagram, that's what people need. That's what they're looking for. Like, give me the answers, give me the meat and potatoes, and do it in a meme or a quick video, 15 seconds, or combine that with a caption or whatever else. And you were just taking it a little deeper. Like you were going a little bit beyond what, the character limitation was within the say a caption, and then taking it into the comments. And I was like, I could get with this because I can get in there. But what really struck me was how people engaged with that differently than I saw a lot of people engaging on other pages. There was a lot of questions being asked. There were a lot of, it was like people were, when I say engaging, they were asking questions. They were adding in, yes, this is what we're seeing here. By the way, here's how this relates to this other thing that maybe happened in my state. And I wasn't really seeing that happen on other people's pages. I was seeing down with the two-way or, high fives and emojis. And so that's what struck me about your page. And so now that I've been talking about it, that's how it impacted me, because I was like, anytime this guy posts something, number one, while it's pro Second Amendment, it seems to me it's very unbiased. And you're not just reporting on one particular case, one particular issue. You're hitting everything from all angles, multiple states, all the things that are going on across the nation. And you're doing it in a way that's it's very in depth. So I'll stop with that because I found it to be very valuable for me in terms of getting information in a way that I feel like I can follow along. It's digestible. And if I want to look deeper into it, I could go someplace else to kind of read more, because you're quoting and you're like, this was written in the actual brief. And this article was written in, this politician said this, or this advocate said that. I find that very interesting. As it was a different take. So that's my monologue on what I got from Firearms Chronicles. But the questions are these. So number one, your writing style is very good. I wonder where this came from. Because at no point did I hear you say, yeah, I went to school for journalism and I was really into American literature or European literature or anything. Where did this all come from?
So I've said this throughout my platform, and I say it many, many times. A lot of these things that I do is I surf the net. I find these stories. I find the stories. Like I said, I've only written a few articles, but a lot of it, what I dedicate myself to, is surfing the internet probably every hour to see what the update is. So in reality, I'm just copying and pasting simply because
that's awesome.
I want everybody to see this information. People need to see this. So yeah, and I mentioned it on my page many, many, many times, and I just say, hey, just disclaimer, I don't write these. What I do is surf the net, every hour, every 2 hours throughout my day, and remain consistent on what is being updated, for the purpose of, hey, this is what's happening in your town. This is what's happening in your state. Get on it.
Where are the if you're going to recommend people beyond Firearms Chronicles page, if they're not following you on Instagram, they should be. That's my plug. But the other part is where do you go? What do you find to be the most credible, up to date resources, like when you say like you're surfing and you're searching, are
Mhm.
there some that are way better than others? What can you share with us?
I mean, I like Bearing Arms, Cam Edwards. Another one is
Okay.
Amoland. I always
Okay.
surf what else? So Guns in the News and see what the latest thing is coming out. Where it's just like I need to see. Okay, what's most important here? Because you hear a lot of opinions. You get a lot of takes from another, but I just take the most serious. And it's like, okay, this should be addressed. People should know this. So that's what I do. I look at the article, read it, and it's like, okay, yeah. So um, there's a lot of brain frying from reading a lot. So, but
Well, I again, like I appreciate it because it puts it in front of me where I don't have to do that. So like I don't have to go searching around. And it again, you cover things that are very I would say a fair level. Like it's never biased towards one state over another or one case over another. And I think if I'm being honest, like I think, folks get frustrated with some of the nonprofit organizations or legal
mm,
organizations that fight the battles for us, which by the way, not to take anything away from them. I have friends at these organizations.
mhm,
Like I love them. Thank God they're out there and they're doing what they're doing. Go team, keep doing that.
mm,
But when they're posting stuff, a lot of times what you see is like it's biased to their cases.
correct.
And that's cool. I mean, they shouldn't be talking about other people's stuff they don't
Right.
know about, but I think it's limiting,
Mhm,
right? It's limiting to with all the things that are going on, and that's where your page comes in. Is it hits points that I was like, I had no idea this was going on,
mhm,
and so to maybe kind of give the audience who may not be familiar with you like some examples. Let's go through like the last three things that you spent time sort of informing folks on, and the latest one is this this business of the U.S. District Court in New York
mhm,
that basically rules that the Bruin decision or the Bruin response restrictions are unconstitutional. That
mhm,
meaning, hey, Bruin came out. If you're not familiar with Bruin at this
mhm.
point, we don't have time to kind of go through all that, but this is a major landmark case that is pro Second Amendment and basically says, hey, the Second Amendment says what it says,
Mhm.
and we should not be restricting people's ability to bear arms and protect themselves. And so, if anything you're doing out there that restricts them from doing that or hinders them from doing that is unconstitutional.
Mhm.
And basically, at the end of the day, like, and I'm overviewing this so you can kind of fill us in with the details.
Mhm.
Is that while this happened in New York, the city of New York's like, fuck you, we're doing whatever we want anyways, which
Correct.
is so frustrating.
Mhm.
So can you talk through this a little bit, just like to give the viewers or the listeners sort of an idea of kind of how you're handling this coverage?
Yeah. So I've been keeping a closer eye on the Bruin situations, and that's going from California to New York and all these other places. So when I posted that article, I noticed that that ruling where the district judge said, "Hey, this is unconstitutional under the Bruin because New York kept renaming like some cities and some areas as sensitive places."
Hmm.
So as they were doing that, of course, they were limiting the Second Amendment because New York does what it does, with all these mayors and all these politicians, with Ho Chul and everything. So,
Hmm.
so judge took a look at that and said, "Hey, no, regardless of quote unquote your sensitive spaces, two-way still applies regardless because it's in the Constitution. It was ruled out by
Hmm.
Bruin." So that's the nutshell on this thing is that these guys were essentially just renaming these towns, these cities like New York City in general as sensitive areas.
Yeah, there's another piece to this too that really was striking, and that is this whole idea of basically the government or some body, for that matter, determining whether or not you are of good moral character and
Mhm,
whether or not you should have a permit to carry a gun or you should be able to exercise buy number one a gun, and in New York you have to have a permit to buy a firearm,
mhm,
right? So basically the court is or the city and the state was saying is like you you have to be we're going to decide whether
Yeah.
it's okay for you to buy a gun based on your moral character. That wild. That to me, that is so offensive,
Yep.
so offensive and disgusting. Like, are you serious? These politicians are the people that are going to tell us whether we're of good moral character or not, or whether or not we can have something. If I'm a New York citizen, I am furious about this.
Mhm.
So this is a major win.
Mhm.
You know, but the reality of this is what? As you write these articles, what's the reality of the court coming out and saying this? Like, what happens in your opinion or your estimation? What happens next?
So it's really, you're skating uphill, regardless of these decisions, because it's been happening in California. Everything gets, hey, it's unconstitutional, but regardless, of it being, you know, them stating, hey, you know what you're doing is basically illegal. You're violating your rights. Still, they always manage to find a way to still axe that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem with states like that is there's not enough people. There's not enough people in New Yorkers' corners, to back it up and to push this out, towards other people. And it sucks because it just feels like every time there's a ruling, the people are just stuck in a corner, and
It's
there's
just a
no
big circle jerk, man.
going from there.
It
Yeah,
just keeps
going
going around and around.
exactly. So, not to talk bad about New Yorkers or anything of that sort, but I'm not calling it a lost cause at all by any means, because with these rulings, it's positive, but at the same time, it's really an uphill battle. It's disgusting. It's immoral. Those people have the right to defend their properties, their families, and themselves. And
Mm.
really, exactly just like how you called it, it's just a circle jerk. And you see these articles again, striking this down again, maybe 2, 3, 4 days later, which is a shame.
Yeah, it is. It's just politicians taking advantage of the legal system and
Mhm.
outrunning the judicial system in the end. So the judicial system, again, the district courts come over the top and said, this is unconstitutional.
Mhm.
Like, you can't do this. But they've already been doing it, and there's zero
Mhm.
consequence to it. And so I mean, however, I think if you're going to take anything away from this, like the silver lining is that the district courts are still saying, like, or continue to say, and this is happening regularly, you have violated the constitutional rights of the citizens of the United States of America, particularly the citizens in New York.
Mhm.
And the more times they say that, the closer this potentially gets to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the
Mhm.
Supreme Court obviously is going to have to make a decision on this. And we know through precedents and things like that, and a lot of wild things happen.
Mhm.
So there's no guarantees, but the consistency of these things being ruled unconstitutional by the time it reaches Supreme Court, somebody there is going to have to make a decision, and we
Correct.
want that. We want that decision to be made. So, a lot of people get frustrated. And I'm sure New York is as frustrated as we are here in California
Mhm.
for the exact same reasons. They continue to play these legal games as politicians. They continue to throw up roadblocks. We've just had a district judge here once again, Father Benitez, as we call him in the 2A
Correct.
community out here, shoot down the assault weapons ban, quote unquote assault weapons ban
Mhm.
here in California again. It just gets, our illustrious governor / Führer and a lot of his cronies, including our attorney general, all up in arms, and they just file some other, bill or pass some other bill that again is ultimately ruled unconstitutional. Just keeps going round and round.
Mhm.
So,
I think
um,
I'm sorry. I think.
your job or what you're doing what you're doing never ends
Mhm.
in terms of providing people with this information, because as long as this crap continues, there's always going to be a story to write, that is
Right.
for sure, or to pass on, as you put it.
Correct. And the unfortunate part is when some of these judges, like I said, these district judges, and going back to New York or California, is when they deem it, say it's unconstitutional, there's no follow up, meaning that they're
Nope.
not holding these people accountable. There's no accountability, so they keep getting away with it. Just like Newsom did when they did the mag. When they struck down the mag ban, what did he do a day later?
Mm-hmm.
He hiked up. He passed the bill that hiked up the the taxes on guns and ammo, what, 11%? What, it's probably now at
Yeah,
22.
nearly.
So that was a
Yeah,
flex.
another
And
10%.
there's no accountability whatsoever when these guys pass these unconstitutional bills. There's nothing. They just let it keep getting away with it.
Meanwhile, moving on to the next story, the agencies, the federal agencies, are getting caught once again with their hand in the cookie jar and continually, I'll just say, screwing the pooch or shitting the bed, as you might want to refer to it as. You didn't say that, I said that. What's this business about the ATF employee being caught gun running to or running guns to Mexico in the latest news? What can you tell us about that?
So, I mean, we all know about Operation Fast and Furious, and, it's still happening. So, yeah, so there was this man working for the government, and, well, he had other buddies that were in Mexico that were either ex-military or whatnot, but they had the idea to go ahead and go to the United States and start buying gun parts. And how they were transferring them was into like a service vehicle, right? That was for the government. That is for the government. And as they were going through the checkpoints and everything, well, it's a government vehicle with government plates, so they're not going to check them. So eventually, they caught whiff. It was reported to the to the feds, and they kind of started doing like a little sting operation. And yeah, they were selling the parts to some feds, and that's how they got caught. So, if I remember that
awesome
detail correctly, I think that's the gist of it. Is yeah, that was it.
Okay,
you know what?
I have so many questions. I wonder. So, were these gun parts that were potentially seized in like ATF investigations, or like taken off the street or whatever, that were then being sold to these good folks down in Mexico? Or were these like new manufactured parts that they were buying from, like legit manufacturers in the United States and then just driving it across the border?
Legit, they were going to gun stores, and obviously the agent was was an American, so they were buying it from gun stores, and they were just transferring it from there. And a lot of the speculation, obviously, is that they were to the cartels or to other people that just wanted their hands on a firearm. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, man. It's all transaction. It's all business. Dude was just probably trying to do his little side hustle there. And obviously, they had he had his, working for the feds in the United States, and some of these guys that were with him worked for the government, military on the Mexican side. So, they're not going to stop.
Unbelievable.
So some of these people, they're bought and paid for. So they were just letting it run until somebody caught whiff, and then they're like, "Oh, all right, well, kind of set up a little sting," and turned out to be factual. They were running gun parts, and obviously it was actually the gun store. The gun store caught whiff of that they were getting it from, and yeah, they notified the feds, and that's how they caught whiff of this whole thing. Yeah, it just. The consistency of them going back and forth obviously was just raising red flags. And so, it's stating the obvious, man. You see me 3 days a week and buying gun parts, look like I have unlimited money. Of course, that's going to raise some questions.
Oh, man, if that was a non-government agent, doing that, or anybody like the ATF, the irony, let's just say this, the irony in this is so rich, is so rich. Like, I mean, if you were in a state, like, what state was this in? Do you remember, by the way?
I don't recall. I do not recall.
I think it was like was it in New Mexico?
In New Mexico, something.
It was. I mean, it had to have been something where someplace where there wasn't, like, there's not background checks on everything. But I mean, like, if you're just buying parts is one thing. But if you're buying like things that need to be registered, like lowers or pistols or things like that, like obviously the ATF is part of that process, right?
Correct.
In the Department of Justice. So
yeah,
just clean up your own house, guys,
right off the bat.
You start trying to, invade the houses of peaceable and law-abiding citizens. Okay, moving on. Here, how about this one? I think this one was great too. This was, I don't know when people are going to be listening to this. My hope is it gets out within a week after us recording this. But this one was awesome because it hits close to home as a California citizen here who's been dealing with the ridiculousness here for way too long. But can we talk about this dude Ryan Busse and his defense of what happened here in California, specifically the Benitez response to basically Busse's argument in court for why people shouldn't have quote unquote assault weapons?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that guy's trying to run for governor in Montana. So yeah, the judge called him out. He was saying, hey, your experiences with handguns and revolvers doesn't, you have no idea what you're talking about if that's the only thing you've ever shot or owned. So his statements and Busey's been that way. He's always been anti assault rifles type deals. It shouldn't be out there. So when he made that statement, I'm glad he was called out on it because it's factual. How can you formulate a true opinion if you never handled, I don't know if he has or not, an AR-15 and AK or everything, you know what I mean? It's, you got to get firsthand experience to kind of know, and most of that, either here at home, and some people, God bless our military, have seen it overseas, but I'm glad he got called out. And as soon as that article came out, I immediately I searched for him and I tagged him and I said, yeah, don't vote for this guy. Especially in a state like Montana that just, that got flipped, went from blue back to red again. So, and it's go ahead.
This is what I mean by the information that you're putting out, because it doesn't leave, like, you're not leaving anybody untouched here. Like, everybody's getting touched, and it's more of like, hey, just be aware of what's going on out there. It's not just that this happened, but this is how it could impact other places. And I love that about the delivery of the information, and that you understand that just because this is happening in some small town or this court in California, the District Court of California, or let's just say the Ninth Circuit, which includes California. I think we're like 52-0 as Second Amendment advocates, like or 0-52. Sorry, like they have struck down like the last 52 arguments. There's no doubt they are anti-Second Amendment at the very, very core. And so, like, going back to this Benitez guy, who again we like a lot right now because he's just pushing all the buttons.
He's trying.
Of the people that continually come out, and he doesn't care what they say about him or whatever. He just keeps doing his thing. This is a different deal, because basically what he's saying is the guy that's arguing this case for the other side is not credible. And so part of my decision is that even your argument holds no credibility with me because you're not credible. You have zero experience. You're basically, quote unquote, whatever. He didn't say this, I'm saying this. You're talking out of your ass. And that, to me, sets a precedent for other judges to maybe do the same for a lot of people at the highest level of our government that are literally talking out of their ass. I mean, we're hearing it come out of the White House on a weekly basis right now. The shit that gets said there is absolutely wild to me. And the fact that gets left unchecked on a regular basis outside of the court of public opinion bothers me. I mean, but what am I going to do? Again, this is the world we live in and whatnot. But again, I really love this case and this article because you really called attention to the fact that now we're calling a spade, which is, you're a dumbass, dude.
Yeah.
You're a dumbass, and you shouldn't even be. And part of the reason you probably lost this case is because you're way out of your fucking league. And now you're going to go to a place like Montana again, which is very pro 2A, and you're going to walk in there and you think you're going to get away with this. But here's my thing. I'm thanking you, whether on the behalf of California, to the residents and citizens of Montana, thank you for calling attention to this, because I don't see a lot of other people doing it, man. Like, nobody else did. I didn't see any other posts about it. I follow freaking everybody. So maybe I missed it. I don't know, but you nailed it. So great job.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm hoping that this, and I'm praying that this decision by Benitez in California, if it sticks, it's going to hit Oregon, and I hope it hits Washington State, man, because I'm heartbroken for my brothers and sisters up there as well. Everything what's going on, and we get a lot of Washingtonians in our gun shop, and they, can you sell me this? Can you sell me that? We can't really sell you anything, man.
Right.
Really, I mean,
Yeah, I know.
it can't sell a full functioning firearm. It has to be in fact, it can't even be a receiver. It just an upper, some mags, a buttstock, the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, as a Californian, I understand that. And what I watched happen just last year, it was exactly, well, it was November. So it's about it was about 3 weeks from now, a year ago, the whole business with having to have a permit in Oregon to buy a firearm, and which would then require you to go through, certain level of training by some unknown agency and some unknown process, which can't be officiated or even administrated at this point, on top of the mag capacity stuff that was going on up there. Immediately that got passed at the state level. And then as soon as that got passed, Washington said, well, we're doing the same. And they did exactly the same thing. And so, we hear people in California, and I've said this before, and, as a California, advocate, and Second Amendment advocate, like the shit speds. It's like cancer.
Yep.
So it works the other way too. And that's the thing, again, like I think that you're saying here is like, if this goes down in California, then the folks that are fighting this fight in places like Oregon and Washington, again, our neighboring states, stand a much better chance. And that's why this is important, that we have more sort of wins. You can call them what you want, whether it's a moral win or otherwise, that we have more wins here. And again, I think, reporting on that and giving the details at the same time, outing some of the individuals that are involved in this, and not just making about like a larger, like, I think a lot of people lose track of, there's a person behind every one of these cases, right? There are people behind every one of these cases, just like there's one behind every law, and behind every argument that gets made. There's a person there, and if those people are being are doing things that are unconstitutional or arguing in a way that's unconstitutional, they should be outed. They should be identified. And so again, that's what I appreciate here. And I think, again, what I appreciate the most about it is like, while I get fired up, and people, you can hear me now, I'm emotional about it, but I get fired up in conversation. I love the way you handle it, very objectively, very factually, and that it's just like, here's the news, man. Like, here's the news. It's coming from a lot of different directions. I'm going to try and boil it down as much as I can so it's digestible, it's palatable and digestible by as many people as I can. And I think the reactions that I see, again, like in your social media, are favorable. People kind of like that. So I think you're hitting this one out of the ballpark, man. And I think more people, even if they're not pro 2A, could learn a lot from what you're putting out there. They might not like the flavor,
Right.
but I think because of just sheer, whatever the content of the story is. But I think the way you're delivering it is like, well, here's the news, man. And I think that's what people want. I really think that's what people want.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback are you getting from people when they talk to you, or they hit you in the DMs or otherwise? What are you hearing from them?
From them is mostly, dude, I had no idea you have this page. You have information. We had no idea that this was going on in our town. Now we can mobilize a few people and you can go and counter this and everything. A lot of mostly just thank yous, or other people just sending me more information, or they're sending me articles. Dude, this is what's happened. I don't know if you know. I don't know if you've seen this or read about this, but boom. And I like that. I like that a lot. But my also like a message to them is saying, you could also be Firearm Chronicles. I'm only one person with a few thousand followers, but you could do the same. You don't have to tag me. You don't have to give me any credit. All I care
Mhm.
is to spread this information as far as possible because I'm just one page. Anybody can do it. And that's my main focus is I just want to spread that information. That's really what it is,
I
and I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I love the DMs. On the times that I felt like quitting, because it gets overwhelming. Your brain gets fried. I've had to take 1 week breaks. At times, but
Mhm.
really, when I look into the DMs, I'm seeing, hey, dude, thank you. I had no idea what was going on. That's my thrive. That means
Yeah, I
okay,
love
you're
that.
still making that impact, and so I'm with it till the end. You know, you,
I love that. What's the like when people find out who you are, or they contact you or have those face to face with them? What are some of the big surprises, like, or what's the biggest surprise when they meet you or kind of hear from you? Like people are going to see you and hear you on this podcast. Yeah, people that watch and know the show, know we put
mhm,
up a bunch of clips and it's on YouTube and whatever else. What do you think the biggest surprise they're going to have is?
is I mean, and I'm gonna dig into racing for a little bit because for years everybody's associated with firearms, anything to do with firearms, as Caucasian. And
Mm,
when I would do my lives, they'd be surprised and be like, "Dude, I swear, like I thought you were white." No, I'm Hispanic, still an American, but that just goes to show that is trying to take that whole false, that it's just white people. No, it could be Mexican people, it could be black people, it could be Asian, it can be all kinds.
mhm.
So, to show that you know protection, being pro Constitution, being pro 2A, it's not just one race. This affects the whole spectrum. Of people from many walks of life here, that live here in the United States or in other countries, because you know that's what I mostly, for the people that don't know me, that have never seen me, I just kind of get that, hey, the little exclamation point. I thought you were white, dude. I was like, no, man, it's
Mm.
I'm still an American. I was born and raised here. I just have different skin color, come from a different background, but
Ah,
this all this affects everybody across the spectrum in all kinds of walks of life.
I wonder in those conversations, where people are maybe a little bit surprised
Mhm.
or taken back. Do you ever have any conversations with folks maybe from the Hispanic community specifically? Uh, and sometimes I'm challenged with, is this Latino? Is it Latino? Like,
Mhm.
what am I supposed to say? I'll be honest.
Mhm.
But because I don't want to offend anybody. At the same time, like, I'm not offended. Like when we're talking about, the different walks of life that are out there,
Mhm.
I don't give a fuck where
Mhm.
you come from or whatever. It makes no difference to me. That's my take. I don't really talk about it on the show. I
Like
hope
an A.
people get that. Like, doesn't matter to me. I am a white guy,
Mhm.
but I'm a fucking American just like you.
Exactly.
So I wonder when you're having these conversations with people maybe from the Hispanic community that have been brought up in a certain culture,
Mhm.
right? Who have a certain lineage and descendancy, and there's a lot of things that go into this again from like family culture perspective.
Mhm.
Do you ever have conversations with folks, or do they ever bring up like they feel like they're not getting nobody's talking to them
Mhm.
specifically, or the way they're being talked to they don't agree with, or they're confused by, or they're offended by, or anything like that? I mean, that's a question I don't have an answer to. Can you expand on that if you've been there or done that?
Yeah, mainly from, like I said, from my page, from DMs or everything. I noticed that there isn't very very many pages out there, and those that I tend to just kind of connect, talk to and everything, and that are surprised and like, dude, I'm glad you're kind of out there, Hispanic and everything, you're influencing, but I feel like I'm not enough people, and
Hmm,
it, especially towards my side, as far as Hispanic is, a lot of them are just kind of like undercover, where it's
hmm,
like, some of my family, regardless, they vote blue, they love the Second Amendment. They're like, yeah, I don't agree, they don't agree other spectrums of other topics. But one thing that I know for sure is that they love the Second Amendment and they do not want the Second Amendment touched. They believe, in their own protection because, just kind of coming from that background, in Hispanic culture, the man, the main provider, he's the sole protector, regardless of what it is. You see that
Mm-hmm.
a ton. So explaining this and everything kind of makes them feel, a little more, ease, comfortable, because it's not the easiest conversation to have, especially, in the Hispanic culture and, because of skin color for the most part, but it surprises them, it impacts them, it makes them happy that, hey, there's more and more pages like that are finally starting to come out, and doing their own thing. Um, I've seen YouTube channels of
Mm-hmm.
other people that are influencing that talk about firearms, about safety, shooting, just being influencers themselves, with all different types of firearm, and everything they're teaching is in Spanish, and which is great. I'm like, wow, some of these guys have been for a while, but they're just not. They haven't been recognized, because like I said, it's kind of in the Hispanic culture, it's kind of just enclosed. We're just kind of in our own little bubble.
That's so interesting to me because I mean this is a dynamic I have not really explored. And
Mhm.
again, in learning a little bit more about you before the show and kind of getting into this, it's an area I wanted to bring up. I think there's so many. If I look at this like a Venn diagram, right? You
Mhm.
have the Second Amendment, and then you have all the people that are influenced by the Second Amendment, or sorry, that are pro Second Amendment,
Mhm.
and all those circles that kind of cross into those other circles as you go through there. And the Hispanic community, Black community, Asian community. And we've heard a lot about them, especially over the last couple of years, particularly like here in California, the
Mhm.
Asian community. You mentioned Rodney King, the events of 1992, rooftop Asians, if you
Yep.
will. Like we've got a page out there called Rooftop Asians.
Yep.
Love what they're doing and what
And
they're
respect.
promoting. Yeah, a lot of respect. I've had some very influential people on this show. Chris Chang,
Mhm.
who's very, very influential, the former Top Shot,
Mhm.
from the Top
Right.
Shot TV series. He went to he's been on he's
Yes, I
been in
got to
front of
meet him.
Congress.
Awesome dude.
Yeah, he's amazing guy with a really great perspective. But I guess my point is like when you think about that, uh, or when you think about how the message is being delivered, I don't see the Spanish stuff because I don't watch the Spanish stuff.
Mhm.
I just wonder how much of an opportunity is out there for people to be educators, to be
Mhm.
influencers, to impact other folks, and where the gaps can be filled. Because, and then going back to your point about part of your family or a good
Mhm.
deal of your family voting maybe Democrat, like on the
Mhm.
blue versus red line,
Correct.
but also firmly believing in the Second Amendment and not having to feel maybe within the culture or the community that because I vote this way or I'm registered this way doesn't mean I identify with this over here, which
Absolutely.
is such a different dynamic when you get into, I think, when you start separating out in communities, particularly like what we're seeing now, like where everybody feels like they're forced to take a side. So that's an interesting dynamic, and I just, again, like I said, I wonder how much opportunity is out there that's
There,
being untapped.
there's a
In I can't even imagine, man.
mm,
I can't even imagine.
there's a lot, Ben, and that's one thing that I know for sure between Hispanic and Latinos that I've seen here, is they love their firearms. They love their Second Amendment, and they're not per se really shy, but like I said, we're just kind of like enclosing our own little group. But you would be surprised how many Hispanic Latinos really love to shoot guns, especially a lot of people in my family. When I did that, when I started this page and I was referring to some of my family, you have no idea how many of my family and uncles were like, dude, I just bought this. What do you think? Hey, I'm going to show off my new this. Hey, sobrino, they're here it is. I just bought a Smith and Wesson M&P and everything else, and it was like,
Right.
oh, that's cool. So I noticed that, but there are voices out there, for the Hispanic Latino community. There's just not enough. And I don't know if it has to do with the stigma or anything else, but I noticed that once, a lot of people started coming out, and teaching a lot of these things, in Spanish and such, that it's not just, American culture, it can be multiple. And I noticed that they
Mm.
got comfortable. It was, they were approaching me, easy to talk to, and everything else. So there's tons of opportunity, a lot.
I'm really I'm encouraged to hear you share that because and what I hope is that you doing so, and there's a listener or two out there that resonates with, and maybe it's a
Mhm,
coach, maybe it's somebody that's aspiring to learn a little bit more or influence more people or run a page just
mhm,
like yours, that they take notes from that and they recognize that sometimes you may feel like you're not being heard. I remember
mhm,
back at the beginning of this, you were saying you had 0 followers. You had nobody.
mhm,
You were just like, I know this information needs to get out, so I'm just going to keep posting. I'm going to keep posting. I'll
mhm,
send a couple of hashtags through the filter and see what kind of happens. And the next thing you know, it kind of blows up, and you're having this huge influence
mhm,
on a number of people. And I mean, you mentioned globally,
mhm,
there's folks out there that are following you, and maybe find a way, and those people find a way to really impact their very local and intimate community in a different kind of way.
mhm,
I've had some other folks on, that do that in their own different way, and it's not everybody's flavor.
mhm.
And so I hope that they understand that's okay too.
Yep,
It doesn't, it
it's all
do
right.
you do you. Just, at the end of the day, if it's coming with the right intention, that being, look, I'm here to help my community. I'm here to spread the good word. I'm here to help people be safe, confident, and also advocates for their own rights,
Mhm,
and or in protecting their own rights and their family and their property and their livelihood and their life, liberty, and
mhm.
pursuit of happiness is what the fucking Constitution says,
Yep.
which is why that Second Amendment was put in there in the first place. If you can just find a way to maybe impact some people differently, no matter where you're coming from, I think that's, while people may be listening to this go, yeah, Scott, that's really ideal. I get where you're coming from, but you can, get off your soapbox. I will
Mhm,
not, because it takes people from a grassroots perspective, just like yourself, to get these messages out
mhm.
to influence the next person. And that's why I started the show in the first place, was just look, there's all these really, really cool people out
Right.
there that have a lot of value to provide, and they're not necessarily given the platform to do that in the current circumstance. So if I can do that, and I think that this conversation is going to be super valuable and or interesting to me, I have a hunch it might be that way for other people too, which is why
Mhm.
I wanted to meet with you tonight, and why I
Thank
appreciate so much that you gave me your time, outside of trying to have a life and be a dad, and
you.
and work a job and run
Mhm.
a flourishing Instagram page, and all the research you do, man. I cannot thank you enough for the time that you've given me or given us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. And the message is, be confident. A lot of it with the Hispanic community is, if you show support, don't be afraid to show support. And me, like multiple others, we kind of want to be that voice, where it's just like, hey, follow me, everything's okay. You can voice your opinion, you can voice, your side of the story too. So I'm going to continue to spread the message here. I'm going to continue to post news. I do post memes here and there because I also want to show people that I have another side of me, a humor
Hmm.
side, or at least I attempt. But I just kind of do that to just kind of even things out a little bit, because y- you know uh, uh, not a lot of the news that we posted in the 2A lately has been the greatest news. A lot of people
Right.
kind of read this and are bummed out. Well, I'll post something funny, in that attempt. So
Well,
that's
I appreciate that.
that's
I mean, I think that there's a time and a place for memes. There's a lot of people out there. I've said this before. And it's specifically directed at what you just said there, and that is, I can be scrolling through and it's like, God, this is the worst.
absolutely.
No, who was I talking to the other day? Nobody. I was talking with my buddy Aaron, who runs Silent. They make Faraday bags for for people, for your electronic devices, for your phone and your laptop, your key fobs. They work with government agencies to help them protect their security and privacy and things like that.
Correct.
And I think the line that he said was like, nobody ever spent an hour on Instagram and logged off and went, man, I feel so great after said no one ever, right?
Yeah.
So like the whole meme thing, like I can appreciate that. And like some of them I don't really get, or some of them I think are just like, you're working too hard here. But at the same time, I do appreciate where they're coming from, and they do have value because they can get a message across in maybe a little bit of a lighter tone.
Right.
Or like you said, just kind of changing it up. And
Smoothing
so
things
that
out.
said, like in terms of you staying on top of things and trying to keep a level head and continue to provide the information you provide. You mentioned, first off, Firearms Chronicles is the page on Instagram, right? But you mentioned like people often help contribute to the news by just letting you know about something that's going on that you may not been aware of. Maybe that makes life a little bit easier for you, so you don't have to scroll as much or do as much surfing. If they want to let you know, where do they go? How do they contact you, or how do they help you do what you're doing?
It's plain and simple. Just go to my page, Firearm Chronicles, send me a DM. Most I'd say just be patient because I have so many people to go through, with so many different topics. But don't just let me post it. You also post it on your page as well. Because that's the way it doesn't matter. It could be, you could have 2 followers, you could have 100. That's 100 people that are being exposed to that, that are reading something. But like I said, it's not. I just can't be Firearm Chronicles. Everyone else can. Like I said, all this information is vital. Don't just leave it up to me. I've gotten DMs from people saying, "Hey, man, I just don't want to step on your toes." I'm a humble dude, man. You're not going to step on any toes. The more information I get, the better. But also post it on your page or keep sending it, keep spreading it out. I don't ask for anyone to tag me on it. I don't ask for any credit. Nothing at all. It has nothing to do with it. It's the message. It's the principle.
I appreciate that, man. And I knew I like I said, like before, like I have a hunch, like there's something going on with this dude. That's why I need to talk to him. That's why I reached out.
Thank you.
And you got back to me fairly quickly. I really appreciate that as well. I understand the time management challenges that happen in the DMs. I get a lot of anxiety when those things start stacking up and feeling like I need to respond to everybody.
Yeah, no.
But I do get back. It might take me a long time, but I do my very, very best to get back. So I can appreciate that. Thanks, Martin. Appreciate you, buddy. Keep doing what you're doing, please. And I'll echo what those other people told you. Don't stop doing what you're doing. It's so important. It's helped me and impacted me so much. I know other people feel the same. So keep doing what you do, man. Keep doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and again, anybody wants news, more information, spread this. My page is Firearm Chronicles. Don't just, if you DM me, just be patient. I know I got a lot of stuff going on, but yeah, I try and stay up to date. If I'm wrong about something, I own up to it. I've done many videos. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be where I'm at. It's podcasts and like you, Scott, man, that really put out there and, make me feel pretty much, like important that I'm doing something. And I appreciate that you took your time to think of me and reach out and do this podcast. I'll see you at SHOT Show 2024.
You're more than welcome, man. I can't wait to see you then. Thanks, brother.
I'll be there. And like I said, it'll be my first time, so I'm pretty stoked to meet you in person.
And I can't wait to see you out there and meet in person finally, and hang out. Maybe have a beer. Maybe have some dinner.
Sounds
introduce you to some friends, and have a great time.
Absolutely.
I'll see you in January, my friend.
I see you as well, brother. God bless.